Hi everyone, welcome to Under the Gun. I'm Jon Friedberg and we're coming at you live from the Rio where the World Series of Poker is going on in full force downstairs. I'm happy to say that in my first event I did cash in it, and that was the $1,000 no limit event. There were lots of players in it, I think like 4,500 players. I ended up finishing somewhere around 150th place for about 3,300, so I'm happy with that. However, I have not been able to play any other events since then because tomorrow I'm leaving on a cruise to Alaska with my family for a week, and it's terrible timing, but it's sort of a family reunion that we're doing. We do it every 5 years, and this year it's on an Alaskan cruise. So I'll be leaving tomorrow, gone for about a week, and then I'll be back to play about 18 more events throughout the World Series. I do want to say, though, you might remember in last show I mentioned the whole Michael Mizrachi issue about how he owed a lot of money to the IRS and how the Florida newspaper had released a story about how he foreclosed on his 2 houses and everything. Well, he may have solved his problem last night, or should I say last week, by winning the $50,000 Players Championship event for about $1.5 million. I'm guessing that he had some sort of backer or didn't have 100% of himself anyway, but in any case, he's probably walking with a lot of money. So congratulations to Michael Mizrachi, the grinder, and hopefully this will help, whatever issues. Maybe they're accurate, maybe they're not. Hopefully this will take care of that. I just wanted to rant about something real quick, and that is the whole British Petroleum, the BP oil crisis going on right now in the Gulf, which has nothing to do with poker really, but I watch that and I think to myself, how do these people get permission to drill for oil at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico without, backup plans in place if something goes wrong, when I can't even drill a hole in the granite in my kitchen in my own house without having an inspector come out to make sure that, the electric lines are fine and the gas lines are fine. I don't understand, and I'm not savvy in the oil industry at all, even though my father and my sister are both experts in the industry. It just doesn't make sense to me how there can be no plan in place or no backup plan for something like this to happen, where there's a leak in the well and now it's gushing up, gallons and millions of gallons into the Gulf. So how is that? And, maybe it's because they're, contributing enough money to the political campaigns. I don't know, but it kind of makes me sick, and I'm not even really into the whole save the ocean, save the fish, save the environment type of thing. But when you watch this on the news, you just can't help to think, wow, this is really amazing. And I think now they've closed off like a third of the Gulf of Mexico to fishing because of all the oil in the water. And that's, the Gulf of Mexico is a pretty big body of water. That's really, really messed up that that's happening. So hopefully that all gets resolved soon. I know it's a pretty nasty catastrophe, but I sure hope that going forward in the industry they, have tighter restrictions on permits or drilling or whatever. I guess I'll have to talk to my, family about that to learn more. Also, on June 1st, the UIGEA went into effect. That's the Unlawful Internet Gaming Enforcement Act. Don't know if that's going to have much of an effect on the industry, since most banks have already really started complying with that, but we will see. And finally, on a much more positive note, I want to introduce my panel today. I'm going to have 2 guests on the show today, as usual, and both of them were amateur poker players going into the main events, and both of them made deep runs, one of them finishing in 13th place in 2005, and one of them finishing in 7th place in 2007. Those guests will be Bernard Lee and Lee Childs. Like I said, both of them came into the main event as amateurs, had amazing runs, and more importantly, well, maybe not more importantly, but to me, as impressively, is they have since gone on to do pretty well in their poker careers with endorsements and other things, so they're still around here today, and looking forward to having them on the show. And now it's time for an update on my Under the Gun challenge. So the month of May has concluded, and overall I ended up playing 23,000 hands, and I won $1,000 playing in 1-2 no limit. As far as trying to win $100,000 in 12 months, this is definitely I'm way below where I should be. However, because I anticipate much of the winnings to occur in the later part of the year, I have to say I'm pretty happy that I profited in my first full month. Now, I will say after a very bad first week, I'm still down overall. So looking first here at my chart for the month, you can see I initially had a great run, and then things sort of went sour and then kind of leveled off. So like I said, $1,000 win and 23,000 hands. So as you can see in these graphs on the screen, this first one is for the entire month of May, where I got off to a great start, and then things went pretty sour and then sort of leveled off. So you can see I finished at about $1,000 win and 23,000 hands. However, I did start this challenge with a pathetic week where I lost $2,700. So looking at this chart, which is my total hands to date on the challenge, which I believe is about 5 weeks of play, 30,000 hands. My total in my goal of winning $100,000 is so far being a $2,100 loser, because I lost a lot my first week and then won a little bit the next month. So, but I've only played 30,000 hands total. I really think after the World Series I'll be playing at least 50 or 60,000 hands per month. And like I said, most of my winnings are going to occur towards the later part of the year when I'm having a much higher win rate and probably, like I said, playing higher stakes, mostly 2-4. With that said, let me get over to my panel where I have Mr. Lee Childs and Bernard Lee here. Bernard Lee, Lee Childs, thank you guys for coming on the show. As I mentioned in my intro, you guys have accomplished the ultimate dream of every amateur in poker of making a deep run, and in your case, Lee, final tabling the main event. Bernard, in 2005, you finished, was it
13th?
13th place in the main event. Lee, you finished 7th in the main event in 2007. Wow, I mean, what can you tell us about what it takes for an amateur to make a deep run in the main event?
Run good. I think for me, one of the things was, for me, I was so happy to be playing in the main event, and I just went in to have fun. I had some lucky breaks of like not having a table break day 1 or day 2. Had very good tables. Supposed to, like last year, I used to think that was one of the magical things, like no table breaks, you get to have reads on everybody. Last year I had awful tables, like everybody, they were good, solid players. So, it was just some breaks like that. I caught some breaks with people just dumping some chips to me, but I just, I felt like I played pretty solid. I didn't try to get too fancy early, or I didn't try to get too crazy, and I just really enjoyed every moment along the way. And so I think that was one of the things for me, just kept me in the right mindset. And then like the next year coming back, it was like so much pressure on myself, just me, because I knew people wanted to have updates and trying to update everybody the whole time, and it was like it just totally wasn't the same experience. So I think just come in and enjoy the moment of it and just try to have fun and play the game that we love, and that was a big thing for me, I think.
Yeah. I think it's similar. Ignorance is bliss, right? You don't know what you're trying to achieve, and for both of us, we know what it's like to get to that kind of promised land. We had no idea going into this. We were there just so ecstatic to be there the day one, to make it through day one. I was fortunate. I had a lot of chips after day one. That was in and of itself great. Then making the cash, oh my gosh, that was great. And so you don't really realize how incredible of an experience it is. And then all of a sudden, the next year or the year after, we get into it. So if you're the first time going in, I would say, play solid ball. Don't think about, I could make it deep and maybe I'll be on TV, or where are the cameras, or why are they not taking pictures of me? And just play your game. And if you play solid ball, then the fortunate things have to happen. You have to have good table draws. You have to have your aces hold up and things of that nature. And if you do that, then you never know. But I would say the one thing I tell all the people that we work with, your teaching and myself, is learn how to play pre-flop, because everyone worries about how you float the flop and how you do all these crazy things in three. Learn to play pre-flop, and you'll go a lot further than you think you will.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. I mean, my game that year was a lot of pre-flop and flop poker.
Too.
I didn't see a lot of turns and rivers. It's hard to make hands by the turn and river, and to have showdown value. It's better. I think coming in, especially if you're an amateur and you're playing against players that actually are better than you, right, you need to try to win those pots pre-flop and on the flop, and work on that other stuff later.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a real big aspect of tournament poker is playing pre-flop,
yep,
as opposed to cash games, which I'm learning right now, as you guys know, is a much more post-flop game.
Yeah.
So absolutely, but Bernard, you mentioned that ignorance is bliss, and that was actually a question that I was about to ask you guys.
Yep.
A lot of, I know, at least myself, thinking back to when I was first started playing poker, I know you or at least I made a lot of decisions that may or may not have been the right decisions, but certainly had good results.
Right.
And I know now, having accumulated much more knowledge about the game, I sometimes overanalyze things and wish I could go back to being, less savvy in certain situations. So how much of that came into play where you just maybe didn't overthink things, as much as you might now that you know a lot more about the game? How much did that come into play to help you advance to such a deep run?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that probably had a big part in my run. I think, there was just yesterday I was playing at the Venetian and I 3-barrel bluffed on a guy and he called me with third pair, and I'm like, I wasn't doing that in the 07 main event. I'm just, I'm certainly playing some position. I'll make a move here and there, but not these big, huge 3-barrel costly pots against some guy. It's like playing a $5 tournament online. Like if you get called by somebody like that, it's your fault. You can't be like, oh, how did he call me? Like, well, he's got a pair. He's going to call you. So you have to know your opponents, and knowing your opponents and who can fold. And that's tough. That's tough stuff to figure out.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know that. So if you're not trying that stuff all the time, and it's not just playing your cards, but you're at least you're following through with continuation bets but you're not, double floating somebody and firing this big, you just don't get caught up in that.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
No, I think so. I don't think I would have made, I'll be honest, I don't think I would have made it as deep as I did if I play the way I play today. And I know that sounds crazy. I think I'm a hell of a lot better player than I was in 05 than I am today. And I also don't think I would have won a title or two if I played the way I played in 05. But it was the perfect situation at the perfect time. I've written about it. I laid down kings twice pre-flop. And I know it sounds crazy, like, how could you do that? Well, once I was absolutely right and he flipped over aces. And the second time the guy told me he had queens and whether he didn't have aces. So that was obvious. So I was wrong the second time. But I'm out of the tournament probably 185 if I make that call with kings, which today there's very few instances where I would have done it. But it was just one of those things where you're in the moment, you're in the main event, you're deep, you got a ton of chips. You just don't believe that he would make this move without it. And I was right, for better or worse. And I don't think I make that today. I just don't. Like I said, I would have probably floated the flop a couple more times and probably gotten myself into trouble. I got myself into trouble in the last couple of main events because of it. So I think that, and for better or worse in 05, for me at least, ignorance was bliss.
And I know for myself, after having walked that path and made it real deep into a tournament, you sort of learn what is going to come, whereas before you get to that, you think, wow, this is easy.
Right.
Day 4 will be easy. Day 5 will be just as easy. And then before we know it, the final table will be here. But once you walk down that path and you find out, what is to come, at least for me, when I make it deep in a tournament now, I start to get a little anxious, a little nervous, because I know that it's about to get much more tough, and those fears can sometimes sort of weigh on me a little bit. So.
For me, I had never made it that deep in an event. I mean, it was 7 days or whatever it was. I literally left every day from my hotel room, and I said, please just come back still in this event. I don't care where I am. And it actually showed the last 3 days. I was 40% of the average stack for the last 3 days. I was in the bottom 10% every single time. I didn't care. I was still in the event. I mean, there's 5,600 people who are still walking, and I'm still in the event. And that was more than enough instead of, our world today. I'd love to be a big chip stack, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, another thing that the two of you guys have done very well is after your success in the main event, you guys have parlayed that into lots of other opportunities, endorsement deals. I see you're wearing a Foxwoods logo. Lee, you and I have taught some WPT boot camps together. You're also running your own training company, Acumen Poker.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about how you were able to parlay that success and what it has become today. Like, what exactly are you guys involved in now?
Well, you mentioned WPT Boot Camp. I actually went to that as a student 3 months before that 07 run, and I'd been playing a lot online and had been really working on my game. But they camp really helped me plug a couple of leagues, and I really liked the way they ran it, the way they taught it. And so after the main event run, I actually approached them about doing some teaching. So I started doing some teaching there. My wife and I started our own company, Acumen Poker. I do some of my own group sessions Actually, I just did a group session. It was like a World Series prep class last weekend, and one of the girls that came to it, Shira Levine, finished 14th in the 1K.
Nice.
So it's pretty cool. She's been to WPT camps as well, so she's really been working on her game. But that was just really cool to see her make that run. So I've been doing that. One of the podcasts I used to listen to all the time, I still do, is the Ante Up podcast. That and they have a magazine now. And I started writing for their magazine when they started that, so I do a monthly column with them. So I'm mainly doing that, doing the training stuff, and just playing.
Well, it's just, I used to teach I've taught a couple times with Lee at the boot camp. I've now since moved over to the World Series Academy. But it just kind of came out of circumstance. After the World Series run, I got contacted by the Boston Herald, who had covered me a lot. I was the last New England finisher in '05. So they covered me a lot, and they said, maybe this kid will write for us, because they had been wanting to do a poker column.
Is that the LNES?
LNES.
Last News
exactly. Exactly. Last Woman's Day. That's right. No. But they contacted me to write a column, and I've been doing that for 5 years. That turned into a couple books. ESPN contacted me to do some columns, and then since then it's just kind of, I have my own radio show now, the Bernard Lee Poker Show on Rounders Radio, which you can get off of podcast as well, and then Inside Deal, which is on ESPN.com, and then last year we started talking with Foxwoods pretty heavily about an endorsement deal. And it's unusual for a brick and mortar casino, to do that, but it took a while to kind of figure out exactly if it made sense or not. And being, Card Player actually named me the voice of New England poker a couple of years ago. And obviously Foxwoods being not only the top New England casino, but maybe one of the best casinos in the world, it was just a perfect marriage. And so it worked out great, and we've had a good relationship for a long time. It's kind of my home court. I've won all 3 of my titles there, et cetera. And so it's worked out really well. So, for better or worse, it's just come around.
So one last thing, what advice, aside from focusing once you're at the main event and, not overplaying yourself and whatnot, what advice would you give amateurs approaching the main event as far as preparing for it? Whether it's, eating right, training, but I'm guessing mostly poker. Like, how would you recommend people prepare for it as far as their own poker game?
Well, in my class that I just did, I had a lot of that. I had a slide on eating right, exercising, the high protein, low carbs, or like good carbs, things like that, just good balance. At least some kind of exercise, even if it means you're walking across the Rio or around the building a couple of times, something, get something going. As far as poker, don't outthink yourself. Don't get too fancy. People don't bluff as often as you think they do. Usually, especially early, people aren't usually playing big pots with nothing. If they are, it's probably not worth it. You got to be able to lay down the best hand if you're going to be a top-notch player, and it just doesn't matter. If anybody knows about laying down the best hand, that's certainly me, but we need to go into that. I think that's a big thing.
What about playing online, playing live?
I think it's interesting, because I actually, in my last article for Ante Up magazine, I did a thing where I kind of compare, it's just my own assessment of like what levels to play for what kind of buy-ins, and the main event, it really kind of covers the spectrum, because you get such a wide range of players. You can go from $1 tournaments to like the Monday 1K or something like that. So, but I think you want to probably err on some of the smaller buy-ins, because it just depends on your table draw, of course. But with such a big field, you're likely to get some people that really aren't that great. They might be okay. I mean, there's a lot of information on Hold'em now, so a lot of people know at least a decent amount. But there's still an amazing amount of pretty bad players out there, which just shocks me every day. But so I think that there's pretty wide range as far as what you would play online. But I wouldn't come into the main event and start experimenting. I mean, that's something I did, because after my 07 run, I really started working on my game hard. It was like I wanted to prove that I was good enough to be there. I wanted to get some other deep runs, and I had a win in a second later that fall, and it was good just for myself, my own validation. But I remember playing, and actually at Foxwoods 10K we played together. I was intentionally playing pots with you and what's his name? Daryl Dickin.
Oh,
like
right,
I'm
right,
intentionally playing with these guys. Like I'm like working on my game in a 10K. It's insane, right? I mean, you need to, if you get your game to where you feel comfortable and play that game. Don't try to get all fancy and work on things when you're playing that big event. You know, it's just like golf. You're going to work on the range and then go and play. You can't tweak things at that point.
Yeah. I would say the way I look at it and the way I tell a lot of people is think of it as a marathon. You know, if you're running a marathon. Now, if you've never run a marathon, basically what you do as a running marathon is you train, and then about 2-3 weeks beforehand, you actually stop running. You don't run. You do a little bit, but you don't. And what I do before is I play a lot up until around mid-May. And then the last 2 weeks, when we come out, end of May, early June, I kind of stop playing. You know, I'll play maybe a sit and go here and there online or whatever and play maybe my home game, but I'm not going to play serious 3-day poker tournaments. And what I do is I sleep. Of course, I didn't get it this time, but normally I'll sleep 8 to 10 to 12 hours, and I'm usually a 6-hour person, and try to sleep a ton because we know we're going to be up a lot. And I'll try to eat right. I'll try to exercise. So for me, it's really trying to prepare before you show up. So if you're preparing for the main event, I would say by mid-June, stop playing. Stop playing these 4-hour day. If you're coming for a $1,000 stimulus event over a weekend, a week before, just stop. I'll tell you something. That's a marathon too. It's 3 days if you're going to make it. So 4 days if you're going to make it. So it's a marathon as well. So think of it as a marathon. Be ready, be prepared, sleep-wise, exercise-wise, eating-wise, and, you know, then let the cards, you know, in your play speak for themselves.
Yeah, and rest on the days off, too. I mean, don't go and jump in another tournament because you might have 2 or 3 days off right there at the beginning, you know, and I know people do it, or they just, you know, play cash games till all hours of the night. I mean, I definitely recommend just taking it easy. Get a massage, hang out by the pool, and just relax.
Awesome, great advice. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
And best of luck throughout the series this year, and of course in the main event. Hopefully you guys can finish second and third.
That's right.
Behind you.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Under the Gun. Make sure to tune in again next week. And to all of you guys playing in the World Series of Poker, good luck, and I'll see you guys next week.